Hey everybody. So I went through my breakdown for Philadelphia versus San Fran in the NFL conference finals here. I just felt like it would be easier if I just walked you through it. I'll be sharing my breakdown on my Twitter at Mr. Electrocute, Mrelectricute. But I'm just going to take a couple of minutes just to go through my breakdown, just so that you understand how it works. I basically try to get a screen grab of everything that I'm looking at, try to walk you through it. So we're going to start out here with Philadelphia offense versus the San Francisco defense. So what I like to do is I start to look at the offensive line because I think the games are won in the trenches. So I do look at the offensive line and sort of where they're lining up. We see here what I do is I track the snaps. So Maitella here at the left tackle, snaps at left guard, snaps at center. We can see that their Philadelphia O-line is pretty healthy. They've been pretty much playing the same positions, not moving around. They're pretty good to go. On the defensive side of the ball, we have Nick Bosa here on the outside. He's had 743 snaps, all as the defensive end. On the other side here, Ubakam has the same thing, plays the defensive end. In the middle, we do have a little bit of turnaround with Javon Kinlaw here. 160 snaps, defensive interior, 347 snaps. So I have here that Kinlaw played in weeks 1 to 3 and then returned in week 17. He's been playing since then. He was a first round pick in 2020, but he hasn't graded out that well in his career so far. So it's important also because Nick Bosa is such a game changer that I really look into where he lines up. He mostly plays this left end here, but he does rotate to the right end sometimes. I would say about 60-40 he plays left end compared to right end, but he does move around. It's worth noting that Lane Johnson here at the right tackle grades out at 83.2. He is dealing with an injury, so we're going to see how he looks against Nick Bosa. But again, if I'm Nick Bosa, I'm lining up on the left tackle, but we'll get into it shortly. So from then I look at the rushing grades. So Philadelphia rushing versus San Fran defense. These are the rushing grades here. We see that Jason Kelsey in the middle, 89.4. He's all pro center. So he's great at run blocking. You can see on the tackles, on the right tackles, Lane Johnson at the right tackle, Mike Teller at the left. Um, they pretty much have an advantage here. We can see Nick Bosa, his run grade block is 81.1, but otherwise in the interior of the line, there is a weakness here between Kinlaw and Armstead, where Kelsey should be able to move that line of scrimmage, get a couple of yards before contact. We're assuming that they'll really control the interior of that line. So we say that there's a mismatch there. On the edges, we also say that Philadelphia has the advantage on the side away from Nick Bosa. So if I'm Philadelphia, I'm really keeping track of where Nick Bosa is going to be lining up and try really to run away from him. Just because he is such a game changer, he still has an 81.1 run blocking grade, um, 13.7 tackles, 5.9 missed tackle rate. So he's not really missing a lot of tackles, 16.7 stops. So he is a game changer, something that you need to be aware of where he's at. So looking at the actual running back, Miles Sanders here, he has an overall rank of 90. His overall PFF grade is 74. Rushing grade is 82.3, which isn't that bad. Gap runs, zone runs, sort of splits between the two. 44% gap run with a 55 elusive rating, which is 85th there. So his rushing direction, if he does run, so we take a look at where he's running, how he runs to. We talked about how behind Jason Kelsey is probably the best run blocking center in the league. He also likes to run to the outsides, to the left hand here and to the right hand. So we're going to see a lot of runs up the middle, I think. It's going to be up to the San Fran linebackers to really stop that run. I do think that they're going to get a little bit of a push up front, but San Fran defense has been pretty stout throughout the season. So then I look at Sanders's rushing grades or weekly grades per week. We can see that he had his best game here in Green Bay, but ever since then, and then I guess New York. But since then, he's had a couple of bad games with against Chicago, Dallas here, against New York at the end of the season, and again in the wild card or divisional round. So his season long average is good, so but he has had some poor games in the last 5 games. So I take a look at his game log. Here, a couple of yards per carry under 3.5. About 5 games there in the last 9, where it's been under 4. He has had a couple of good games against Green Bay, the Giants, New Orleans, and the Giants again. So a season long, he's at 4.9 yards a carry. So pretty average. He has played San Francisco twice in his past. He's had 13 rushing attempts in both of those games, rushing for 46 and 55 yards each time for about 3.5 and 4.2 yards per carry, and playing about 77 to 67% of the snaps. The difference is San Francisco's run defense. He hasn't faced a run defense like San Fran. San Fran has the number one run defense, allowing 60 yards a game at 3.3 yards a carry, which is also number one. And they've also faced the fewest rushing attempts at 18. I believe that's because one, they've played ahead most of the season, and two, their run defense is just that good that when you're running for 3 yards a carry, that's second and seven, third and three, you're not really making it, so you have to abandon the run, sort of try to get around there. So I say here, because the good run defense, San Fran actually faces the fourth most targets to running backs, about 7 per game, and the 12th most receptions to running back. So even though they face the fourth most targets, they're allowing the 10th fewest receiving yards and the lowest yards per receptions in the NFL at 6 yards per reception. So teams are trying to get around that line by passing to the running backs, but the linebackers are just so fast that they're preventing the large yards after catch. It's something to really keep an eye out for. If I'm taking a Sanders or those kind of yardage lines, I'm probably leaning towards over in receptions but under in yards. Here we can see the San Fran versus Philly run. We have number one rushing TDs per game, but San Fran's only allowing 0.06, which is number seventh. Yard per rush, Philly's averaging 4.7, but again, San Fran's at 3.4 there. So things to keep in mind, sort of a strength versus strength here with San Fran. Then I go back and take a look at San Francisco's game logs. What kind of running backs have they faced? How have they done over those times, right? They've faced Tony Pollard, kept him to 3.67 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs, 4.06. Brian Robinson, 2.6. Ken Walker, who might get Rookie of the Year at 3.9, Alvin Kamara at 1.8, and Austin Eckler at 4. So these are some decent running backs. Most of them I would actually put ahead of Sanders in terms of pure rushing. So I would assume that he's probably going to be around 3 to 4 yards a carry based on how he's been doing there. Okay. So then I look at these Philadelphia passing offense versus San Fran defense. You can see here that Philadelphia really chooses to run a lot. They've actually have the fourth fewest pass play percentage, 13 best completion percentage, um, and for overall ninth passing yards per game. That tells me that they're bigger pass plays, not a lot of volume pass plays, but they're bigger chunk plays. Because San Fran's run defense is so good, teams are really trying to pass against them, and because they're also ahead, teams are passing against them. So they actually face the second most pass percentage of plays. They're allowing the 22nd worst or best completion percentage to quarterbacks. But they do have the number 3% interceptions thrown and 15% sack rate. So then I look at the offensive line in terms of their pass blocking. We can see that the PFF has actually rated the Eagles as the number one pass or offensive line, mostly because of Jason Kelsey here at center, but also again Lane Johnson at right tackle, 89.8 pass blocking grade. They're going up against Nick Bosa again. He's 90.9 at the edge there, but in the interior they have sort of average, below average in terms of Armstead and Kinlaw in terms of pass blocking or pass rushing again, but it's mostly due to the linebackers. So I do think that Philadelphia will have the advantage on the line. It's just a matter of containing Nick Bosa, watching where he lines up. Same thing where if I'm San Fran, I'm moving Nick Bosa really here to over the left tackle, seeing if I can generate some pressure here on the left side. If you take a look at the numbers here, Jordan Maitala, he is the weakest point on the line, allowing pressures on 6.8% of dropbacks. Really, right tackle Lane Johnson and the center, not a lot of pressures given up there. So the weakness there is on the left tackle. That's where I would line Bosa up on. So when you're watching it, keep that in mind. If they do move him to that side, he should be able to get some pressure on that side. So then I go into the Philadelphia receivers versus the San Fran secondary. Here we have A.J. Brown here on the left, Quez Watkins in the slot, and Devontae Smith there on the right. We can see here their slot rate versus wide receiver rate. We do have Quez in the slot most often. On the corner side, we have Lenore, Jimmy Ward, and Charvarius Ward. This is a typo for Gibson. Hafunga here as the strong safety against Giles Goddard. So I look at the QB ratings allowed. Dallas Goddard is actually getting a 125 passer rating when targeted. Because Watkins actually 83.2. His we take a look also, sorry, at the completion or percentage in coverage, and then the actual catch rate allowed there. Jimmy Ward's actually allowing us 81% completion, but Darius Ward is at 59.7. So that's something to take an eye on, that matchup there between Darius Ward and Devontae Smith. I did look, the both receivers, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, do move around the rotations. They don't tend to play a specific side, so it's hard to really gauge the matchups. But in general, the weakest link here is Lenore here at right cornerback. I think that's who they would try to target. I also think that Keswakin, when he is on the field, he's going to see a lot of one-on-one matchups. He is their deep threat, so I am looking at either longest receptions or him to get a long pass there, just because I think that he is one-on-one. He is very fast, and I think he can get there. Jalen Hurts as a quarterback here, he's actually the 7th ranked quarterback in terms of PFF grade. A passing grade is 8th at 80.6. QBR quarterback rating at 101.6 there. Um, we have 2.9 scrambles a game, completion percentage at 66 there. Average depth of target only 8.6, which is 42th best in the league. Average time to throw a whopping 2.86, which is kind of high. So we look at Jalen Hurts' weekly grade here. In the last couple of games, he hasn't been too great. 57% completion rate in week 12, 15 in week 15, sorry, 59 in week 15, 57 in week 18, and 67 in the divisional round there. Looking at his average depth of target, we have 8.5. Big time throw, we see the big time throw percentage around 4.1. So every 4% of passes are going deep there. Taking a look at his NFL passer rating, he actually had pretty good passer rating here in a couple of games there. A couple of bad games at the end of the season, but overall, that's about 8 to 9 passer rating games of over 100. Here's the big thing that I'm looking at here, passing pressure. So how does he look when he's kept clean versus under pressure? He's facing pressure about 30% of dropbacks, whereas completion rate is 44% or 43.9, 4 TDs, 2 interceptions. It's a really big drop off between when he's kept clean. He's at a completion percentage of 73, yards per attempt at 8.8. So under pressure, passing grade drops almost 50 points. His turnover worthy plays double. His completion rate drops from 30% to 44%, and his passer rating drops 50 points to 65.2. That's going to be the key in this game, is whether or not San Fran can generate pressure and get to him. The Philly hasn't really seen that much pressure as of late against the Giants. So we'll see if that turns out. Again, looking at his, so I'm looking at here his rushing types. So does he actually scramble or design runs? So here I took a look. So 2, 1, 2, 5, those are the number of scrambles per game. And these are the actual design runs where he's getting yardage, how long he's getting, things like that. I also take a look at which way he runs. So you can see when he does run, he takes off to the edges, left end, right end here. He doesn't really like to go up the middle. Does go on the right guard a couple of times, but again, it's the edges mostly where I think that the San Fran linebackers are just, they're able to match his speed. They should be able to match him there. I think they'll be able to negate some of his longer rushes because they'll be there to meet him. They'll be able to just get back to the line of scrimmage. I take a look at what rushing quarterback San Fran has faced. They haven't really faced a real rushing quarterback. Dak's not really a rushing quarterback. Jared Stidham rushed for 34 yards. He's not a rushing quarterback. Mariota is probably the closest thing at 6 attempts at 50 yards, and Justin Fields in the first week for 11 attempts, 2.8 yards. So that's something to keep in mind. They haven't really faced a running or true mobile quarterback with that big play potential. Okay, so now I look at San Francisco's offenses versus Philadelphia's defense. Same thing where I look at the line here. Left tackle Trent Williams is Pro Bowl left tackle. Mike Pagunci here at right tackle, pretty good. Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, they're sort of matched up strength versus strength. And then that interior versus the defensive line interior, weakness versus weakness. So In terms of snaps, same thing with Philly, but San Fran has most of the snaps there, pretty much all their starters there. And on the defensive line, they're pretty much playing most of their starters there as well. So in terms of San Fran's run blocking, same thing. Trent Williams there at the left end. I think that's 92.9. Mike McGlinchey at the right tackle at 73.3. So those are the studs on the San Fran offense. Pair that with George Kittle here, the one of the best run blocking tight ends. It's really hard to stop those runs, so it's going to be up to here. Josh Sweat is probably the best run stopper on that line. They do have a weakness, Philly, it's their run stopping. All below average grades here for Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, and Hassan Riddick. They're really good at generating pressure, but not so great at the run stopping. So I think a lot of runs will be behind Trent Williams rushing to the left. It's going to be up to Josh Sweat to match those runs to the left. However, if they do run to the right, Michael McGlinchey, he does have a clear edge in run blocking here, so I could see a lot of runs to the right as well. McCaffrey is one of the best. He is dealing with a calf injury. He's probably going to play, no problem, but we did see that he did sort of split snaps, especially at the end of the game with Elijah Mitchell. So we're both monitoring those injuries. They didn't practice today, Wednesday, so we'll see how that looks, during the week. Philadelphia sees seventh fewest rushing attempts, but allows the 12th fewest rushing yards at 4.45 yards a carry. I think that's attributed to just Philadelphia being up so much. Second half games, they don't see a lot of rushing. So then again, same thing. I look at the running backs that they've played. Barkley here at 6.7 yards a carry. Kamara at 4.56 yards a carry. Zeke, yeah, he's fallen off a cliff, 3.44. Derrick Henry, though, pretty impressive. 11 carries for 30 yards at 2.7 a carry. Aaron Jones, same thing, 3.5 yards a carry. So Jonathan Taylor there, another one, 3.8 yards. So some decent running backs that they've able to negate. Um, and that's not just yards, but it's yards per carry. So we'll see how he's doing against McCaffrey. In terms of rushing direction, he's all over the place. But we talked about rushing to the left end behind Trent Williams and rushing up the middle there. So keep that in mind. Also taking a look at Mitchell's rushing yards here. Now we look at San Fran's pass blocking versus Philadelphia's D line. Again, the strength lying in the left tackle here and actually in the middle here as well. But the Philadelphia pass rushers, Hargrave and Reddick here on the outside, they look to have the best advantage here. So it's going to be dependent on whether or not they can get to pass blocking or pass rush snaps. So it's really up to San Fran to keep those down in distances short so that they're always guessing, is it run or is it pass? Over the season, San Fran O-line ranks, they've allowed 20 hurries, which is ranked 8th. Pressures allowed 117, which is actually third best in the league, and sacks allowed at 15, which is fourth best in the league. So again, sort of strength versus strength here. It's going to come down to those matchups. If we're watching live, that's what I really look at, is who's winning those battles. Taking a look at passing directions, last week Brock Purdy was actually facing Dallas, which actually has a decent run D line. I compare that, so I take a look at the numbers. We can see here in the middle, Purdy really likes to throw in the middle, 3 of 3, 7 of 8. These passer ratings 118, 118, 105 when targeting players in the middle. I think he's going to pretty much stay the same here, where he's trying to get those things off. Last week, it was a big story about under pressure versus kept clean. When he was under pressure, he had a completion rate of 33% versus when he's kept clean at 88%. I think just those first reads that he's really trying to throw at, it's going to be key to just design those plays where he's kept clean. His time to throw needs to be quick, because if the pass rush can get there, then his passer rating falls off a cliff. Turnover worthy plays are there. Um, Completion rate falls off. So it's imperative that they keep the pressure off of Purdy and keep him clean, because there's night and day difference there. Season long passing pressure, same sort of thing, but a little bit better where he's under pressure, 64.7 adjusted completion rate. Passer rating 88.1 under pressure, about 115 when he's kept clean. Um, Same thing, pressure 47%. So that's a key thing here. Looking at the matchups in terms of wide receivers and corners, we have Brandon Ayuk versus James Bradbury there on the left, Juwan Jennings versus Gardner Johnson, Darius Slay versus Deebo Samuel. Now, James Bradbury, he's one of the best corners in the league, actually allowing a 54.2 passer rating and a 46% catch rate against. Third best in the league, and actually allows the lowest passer rating in the league. So it's imperative to know where he's at. I actually looked up his snap count as well. It's not here, but he does line up at right cornerback. Oh, here it is. Right cornerback for the majority of the time. Only in weeks, I think 15 and 16, did he mix it up with going left cornerback. I think that's because Senior Gardner Johnson was out from weeks 13 to 17, so Bradbury was forced to move around. Now that Gardner Johnson is back, I expect to see Bradbury there at the right cornerback on that side. And so then it's easier for San Fran to sort of game plan around him. If I'm San Fran, I'm sort of passing to the right to get away from Bradbury. Um, just I don't want him to really be a factor there. So San Fran does a good job of mixing up their personnel. They keep the same formation but move people around within that formation. So you'll see McCaffrey out wide. You'll see Debo in the backfield, Kittle out wide as well. It's really hard to defend because you're defending the formation, but not the actual player matchups. So Shanahan is able to create those one-on-one matchups. He's really trying to get those guys into space. Debo in space, Kittle in space. They're all going to kill you with yards after catch. And Philly hasn't really done the best tackling. So I think that's the key in terms of how to beat this Philly defense. Overall, I don't really have a side yet. I think it really depends on that O-line matchup, whether or not they can generate pressure. I think we haven't seen Purdy really play from behind. So it's one of these things where if Philly's up by a bunch at half and now Purdy has to throw all of second half, that pass rush by Philadelphia is going to get home a lot of times. I can see them running up the score. Whereas I think if San Fran can keep it close, if I'm San Fran, I'm running the ball every play. I'm trying to milk the clock. I'm trying to keep possession. I think the Philadelphia run defense is the weakness. So again, I'm trying to do the best that I can to keep myself into the game. I'm probably even taking the coin toss, trying to get that first possession so that I don't have to fall behind and become one-dimensional. So those are the things I'm looking at. I'll post my plays on my Twitter in terms of the games, but I do have so far I have Miles Sanders under 57.5 rushing yards. I have George Kittle over 3.5 receptions. I do think one of the ways to combat the pressure by Philly is quick releases off the line. So I think Kittle will see a lot of quick slants, quick passes, things like that. Whereas in other games, I would have taken his yards. But I think because of the pressure from the D line, you have to scheme him open, have those outlets. And Kittle's one of those best contested catches in the league. So I think he gets his catches there. Again, Sanders under because I just think San Fran's rushing defense is pretty good. And then I have Elijah Mitchell to score a touchdown at plus 390. I think because McCaffrey's injured, you're going to see a lot of splitting carries at plus 390. I think I have to stab it at half a unit. But again, all of that information is going to be up on my website, on my Twitter, along with this breakdown. So check it out. Again, it's on Twitter. It's at Mr. Electrocute, MrElecCut, Mr. Electric. Okay, see you guys later. Thanks for watching.